Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. By viewers like you. Thank you.
Tonight, a deal to raise the debt ceiling still hangs in the balance. Thanks for joining us. I'm Amitha Sharma, in for Maya Trabulsi. If the proposal makes it through Congress, age and work requirements for certain benefits could change. KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado has details on the deal and what it would mean for San Diegans.
Just because President Joe Biden and Speaker Kevin McCarthy reached a deal on the debt ceiling bill over the weekend doesn't mean it will pass. The nation could still default on its debt.
There are lawmakers in both parties who don't like this deal because each party is giving something up by it.
Thad Kauser is a professor of political science at UC San Diego. He says one of the compromises in the bill is tied to food and cash assistance. Right now, most adults 18 to 49 years old must be working to qualify for SNAP. If the bill passes, the age requirement would be expanded to 54. But it would also lift the work requirement to qualify for veterans, the unhoused, and young people transitioning from foster care.
But many progressives say, you know what, these work requirements don't work. They don't get people back into good paying jobs. And so you're just needlessly harming the poor.
He says both leaders must convince others in their own party the consequences of voting the bill down are worse than the compromise.
Not being able to pay its debts, not being able to send payments, Social Security, Medicare payments, other, really vital payments for the American people and for the world economy. It'll be a disaster.
And that's something Robert Kamensky of Feeding San Diego is worried about. He says while the support they get from the government is minimal, this will trickle down to people on the edge. He says they're already stretched thin. Inflation has doubled some of their costs, and more people are reaching out for food assistance.
It started in the mid 80,000 household range in January, and last month we were at 94,000 households being served.
He says big donors are reluctant to give as much during uncertain times, so their donations are down 25% overall. But the people most affected have been their steady donors.
The ones who give the $15 to $20 a month, they do it religiously. They've been doing it for months. And these are the ones who are the most negatively impacted, where they're having to reluctantly say, I can no longer give.
He also says anytime there's a new requirement, more people will end up in their line. But it's the donations that are priceless that give him hope they will always have enough.
And he was an unsheltered homeless individual who had heard about what Feeding San Diego is doing and generously gave what little he had, which was a $10 bill, to say there are people who are worse off than me.
Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
Homeless encampments continue to take up San Diego's sidewalks, and city leaders say they are impacting children who walk to school. Melissa May has the story.
Every school day, twice a day, Perkins Elementary School students are forced to walk in the streets to get to their school because of the homeless encampments on the sidewalks near the campus.
We don't need the needles on the side of the street. We don't need piles of poop laying on the side of the street covered up.
Vivian Kitta is a parent of a 10-year-old who attends the school.
It's hard seeing the homeless because I try to help them myself. If I have extra funds where I can actually help them.
About 400 students ranging from kindergarten through 8th grade attend the school, and about 40% walk to school, passing homeless encampments. Fernando Hernandez is the principal at Perkins Elementary and describes what students witness.
Homeless individuals brandishing knives and weapons and threatening to hurt one another. They have seen them punching one another. These are all the things we have heard our children say when they come to school. So how it impacts them in general, all I can say is there is an elevated level of stress that is experienced by our children.
San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria and educators came together before school on Tuesday to talk about the city's unsafe camping ordinance.
This proposed ordinance will prohibit tent encampments in all public spaces throughout the city if there is a shelter bed available. And it will prohibit tent encampments at all times in key sensitive areas throughout the city, such as near schools and parks.
Along with the ordinance, a safe sleeping program will be presented to the City Council as part of the city's comprehensive housing strategy.
2 sites at the edge of Balboa Park that will accommodate hundreds of unsheltered individuals in city-provided tents.
But according to homeless advocate Michael McConnell, this ordinance is not going to reduce homelessness. It's just going to move the unsheltered from one sidewalk to another.
It seems like this is meant to limit the places people can be to a very small amount of places across the city. So I don't see how that's going to I don't see how. I know it's not going to reduce homelessness.
According to the latest data from the Downtown San Diego Partnership, there were nearly 2,000 people living unsheltered in downtown San Diego in April. McConnell referenced the city's plan to close the shelter at Golden Hall,
which is 400 to 500 people by the end of the year. So creating 400 to 500 safe camping sites, that doesn't create any net increase in beds for people to get off the streets.
KPBS reached out to the city to find out when the Golden Hall shelter will close and what will happen to the people living there when it does. In an email, a city spokesperson said there is no date set to close the shelter and, quote, it will not close until we have found a suitable place for all residents to go. The unsafe camping ordinance will be presented to the City Council on June 13th. Melissa May, KPBS News.
Carlsbad High School students walked out of class today to protest what they say is a lack of support for the LGBTQ community. KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne has more on the controversy surrounding the school's vice principal and school board.
The students were protesting recent actions by their vice principal and the Carlsbad Unified School District. Earlier this month, Vice Principal Ethan Williams spoke at Mission Church in Carlsbad and urged the audience to attend meetings about the district's Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Plan. He encouraged the church audience to call for no sexual identity or gender ideology curriculum, groups, or celebrations on public school campuses.
The school district was trying to develop the diversity curriculum and get feedback from the community, and then the church drowned out the voices of parents.
Serafina Kernberger is a Carlsbad Unified parent.
It would be nice if the parents of Carlsbad School District were listened to over and above people who don't have a stake in, direct stake in these issues.
Ash Bering is a junior at Carlsbad High School. They said that since Williams' speech, the atmosphere at school has grown tense.
Currently, I do not feel safe at my own school because not only of Vice Principal Williams, but because of all the other students and the harassment that I face on the daily.
What has that been like?
The constant slurs, mocking, and just, I've been handed a piece of paper a few different times that's like, free my boy, Vice Principal Williams, freedom of speech, and it's like, if you did your research, he does have freedom of speech, just not as Vice Principal Williams.
Bering says the second hit to the LGBTQ community was when the Carlsbad School Board decided to postpone its vote on raising the pride flag. That decision came after Carlsbad City Council also voted down the motion to display the flag at City Hall.
I feel like I shouldn't have to fight for this my junior year. It's really disheartening almost to know that Pride Month is right around the corner and I'm having to fight for the ability to feel safe in my own school. And for the fact of raising a pride flag, which I feel like should be a no-brainer at this point.
Students have turned to the North County LGBTQ Resource Center for support, where Max Disposti is the executive director.
It hasn't been the first time the Carlsbad leadership has struggled to really represent and lead in a positive, affirming way the diversity of the LGBT student populations or just LGBT residents.
Disposti says once again, Carlsbad has missed the chance to be an ally with the LGBTQ community. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
The student walkout today demonstrates part of a larger trend across the nation. Conservative groups are using the First Amendment to skirt local and state laws on inclusion and protection for LGBTQ+ students at school. KPBS North County reporter Alexander Nguyen has that part of the story.
And we want no sexual identity or gender ideology curriculum, groups, or celebrations on public school campuses.
That's the voice of Ethan Williams, vice principal of Carlsbad High School, in this audio obtained by KPBS. He was speaking at Mission Church, advocating against the district's effort to be more inclusive. In response, Carlsbad Unified Superintendent Ben Churchill released a statement saying he disagrees with and condemns the comments as against the state's education code and the board's resolution to support LGBTQ+ students. The Carlsbad Education Alliance, however, says the superintendent's statement violates Williams' First Amendment rights. David Lloyd, the director of the First Amendment Coalition, says that's not necessarily the case.
That statement standing alone does not violate anyone's free speech rights because it does not represent any kind of adverse action against the assistant principal.
Though he says the district could be within its right to discipline Williams because he is considered to be in a leadership position.
From a First Amendment perspective, one who occupies a leadership position in a government agency is generally expected not to publicly oppose and resist the policies of that agency. Now, if he doesn't like those policies, he's certainly free to seek other employment.
Lloyd says teachers, however, have a bit more leeway to speak out against policy they don't like because they are not considered to hold leadership positions. That is what's happening at the Escondido Union School District. Well, 2 teachers here at Rincon Middle School filed a lawsuit against the district, claiming their policy to refer to the students by their preferred pronouns and not to disclose their gender identity without their permission violated the teachers' freedom of religion and freedom of speech. Even though the Supreme Court has affirmed a public employee's right to speak out against government's policies, Lloyd says in this case, the district's policy does not seem to violate the teachers' free speech rights.
That is most likely going to be considered speech pursuant to official duties for which public employees do not have constitutional protection. They must, follow the directions of their employer to do their job as the employer has instructed them.
Lloyd says there could be professional consequences for those teachers if they choose to violate the policy. As for the religious freedom aspect, the court has allowed for some religious exemptions within reason, but that is not as clear-cut. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
Speculation is growing about the health of 89-year-old Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein. A new report indicates she has become increasingly reliant on aides to do her job on Capitol Hill. She maintains she can fulfill her duties and will not resign, but should Feinstein step aside, Governor Newsom would nominate the person to complete her term. He has said he would appoint a black woman to the seat, and some California Democrats are lobbying the governor to keep that promise. Since World War II, Sister League of San Diego has been giving women a fresh start. They provide safe housing and supportive services to women affected by mental health issues, homelessness, trauma, and domestic abuse. KPBS photojournalist Charlotte Radulovich takes a look inside.
Sometimes I get a little annoyed at them because they don't do what I want. But it's, in the end, they're right.
This is the kitchen area, so another thing that's really important with our program is not having to worry about food. That's a big thing. I mean, some of our residents are like in and out of hospitals, they've been in their cars, they really just have like nothing at all.
It was the way I was before. I had my own places, my own apartments, my own life. And it is nice. With my own furniture, my own everything, but I'm not ready for that yet.
We have, shifted gears a little bit and try to keep up with the needs of the community in San Diego. And we found, a few years back that it was the mental health aspect of it that we are finding a lot of people on the streets now. We're small, but we're mighty. And, we can allow that consistency and that support and be what they need. We try to kind of mold to where they need help.
Okay.
I'm an ex-drug addict, so I'm clean, and I was really deep in my addiction in 2021.
How did you picture yourself back then? I probably would end up dead. It's from the diabetes.
Probably dead.
Women 18 and up, everyone has a mental health diagnosis. You know, we do want them to have a psychiatrist, have a therapist, be going to groups, have a case manager, you know, helping them gather all the resources that they can so they don't end up back on the street. A lot of the ladies kind of hang out here, have their cigarettes, talk after work, things like that. The idea is for this to be the last stepping stone to being off the streets, being out of their cars, being done with couch surfing, being done with fighting with friends and families, and just having it somewhat figured out.
2 years back, would you ever picture yourself doing so much at this point?
No.
My whole mindset has changed. This place has been like a miracle for me. What is next?
Well, with school, I'm, trying to become a drug and alcohol counselor. Through Big Sister League, it really showed me that I am capable of having a normal life.
And now I'm turning into a butterfly. I'm gonna go out into the world, so, yeah.
I just want to go out and tell people, you can do it, you can do it.
You've been so good. We appreciate you, Marilyn.
I know you do, Sammy, and I appreciate you too.
As California's fire season approaches, there's growing concern among herders that a new state regulation may put their most diligent employees out of work. After a winter of heavy rain and snow, grazing goats are in high demand to eat wild grass and shrubs. When the summer heat arrives, that vegetation will dry out and may become fuel for wildfires. Private and public landowners say targeted grazing is a more environmentally friendlier way to reduce fire risk than machines and chemicals. But herders say California's farm worker overtime law is making their service more expensive, which threatens to put them out of business.
If we cannot fix the current legislation, we will be forced to sell these goats to slaughter and to the auction yards, and we'll be forced out of business and probably file for bankruptcy.
The goat grazing industry is pushing for lawmakers to approve legislation that would treat them the same as sheep herders. So far, that bill hasn't received a public hearing.
Well, we have a bit of a breezy setup here this evening and through the night for the inland areas. I'll show you the wind advisory in a moment, but temperatures are going to be moving a little bit here. We have a little bit of a deviation. We're going to cool down a slight step on Wednesday, and then we're going to bounce back with a temperature rebound. Even Thursday is going to be warmer than Wednesday will be, so you're going to notice a little dip and then a rise. And another thing certainly worth mentioning has been and remains the persistent low clouds near the coast here, and they're pretty stubborn this time of the year. May gray gives way to June gloom, as many say. There's the wind advisory, and it is well off to the east, so areas like Westmoreland and Calexico under a wind advisory through the night until tomorrow morning. So tonight, cloudy, could be a little bit of mist late at night, patchy drizzle for some near the coast, breezy inland, not much wind near the coast though, and you'll notice that we do have that murkiness there in coastal areas, so you might need to use the windshield wipers once or twice. Inland areas breezy, chilly into Mount Laguna, 39 degrees there, and future radar futurecast shows those persistent clouds and occasional little blips of green, just little suggestions of a sprinkle or two. Otherwise, we're going to be in generally dry shape for most of the crowd for the inland areas. So Borrego Springs 85, a little cooler than it has been on Wednesday. 67 for your high in San Diego. A couple of areas of mist or drizzle in the morning. Mount Laguna 54. And after that slightly cooler day, we're going to bounce back up. So the coastal forecast, we drop to 67 Wednesday, 68 Thursday, rising to 70 Friday. Low clouds breaking. It will be a little brighter in the afternoons as we move on through the weekend. We're looking forward to that. Inland areas, you can see a slight dip in temperature for Wednesday, a little bit of a rise Thursday, but a more notable rise, a big jump by Saturday. 76, you're going to notice that. And then some low clouds will be a little more persistent in the mornings, even into Sunday. Mountainous areas, 54 Wednesday. Thursday, rising to 60 Friday, 62, 63 for Saturday and Sunday. And the deserts, we do step down to 85 before a rebound to 100 degrees by Sunday. So the rise will be felt by most, if not all of us here as we step into the weekend. I'm meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
For many, time with the in-laws over holidays, anniversaries, and birthdays is plenty. But in our ongoing series, Under the Same Roof, I spoke to a couple who moved in with the wife's parents temporarily to build their bank balance. Then they stayed for the togetherness.
Hi. Hi, welcome.
Andrew and Carrie Maxwell opened the door to their home. 2 years ago, the Maxwells and their infant daughter, Rudy, moved in with Gina and Stephen Donahue in their spacious 4-bedroom Carlsbad home.
My wife and I decided to sell our condo when the market was almost at its peak. We sold it for a good profit.
They moved in with his in-laws to save a little money. And then Andrew Maxwell says they plan to buy their own forever home.
But after about 3 or 4 months of being here, we all kind of decided that we really liked living together.
More people under the same roof means more help.
The fact that my in-laws are around just for extra hands, for helping, for playing with our daughter, for cleaning up after her, for feeding her even. Like, there's been times where she wouldn't want to eat dinner, but my grandma could get her to eat dinner, no problem.
Practical benefits aside, bonds have deepened, despite the common perception that in-laws hardly ever get along.
All of our personalities kind of mesh very well together, which kind of makes sense because who my wife is, and I married my wife, and so it makes sense that my personality should also work well with my in-laws.
For Andrew's wife, Carrie, the transition back to her parents' home was even easier.
I'm back in my old bedroom. I've had a fortunate experience that I like my parents. I lived with them until I got married, so I was 28 when I moved out.
When she moved back, Carrie says she and her mom resumed their camaraderie. They go to restaurants, get their nails done, watch movies, play Pokemon, and listen to their favorite 80s bands. The only difference is now Carrie's almost 3-year-old daughter enjoys the music with them.
My daughter's favorite band is Devo. She also likes the B-52s. It's very sweet.
I love having my family with me, especially my granddaughter. It's just really special to have that time to bond.
For Carrie's mom, Gina, living with her granddaughter has been a lifeline.
She just is a motivator for me to get up and get moving. I have fibromyalgia, and so I'm exhausted all the time. But when she's here and she wants to go play, take the dog for a walk, you know, I'm ready to go.
Andrew and Carrie pay her parents $700 each month in rent. That's quite a bargain, considering a 2-bedroom apartment in Carlsbad can run between $3,000 to $4,000. The couple also purchase most of the groceries, and Carrie does a lot of the cooking while Gina watches Rudy. Gina's husband, Stephen Donahue, says he never imagined he'd share a home with his adult daughter and her family.
When I grew up, it was you graduated high school and you were out. That's it.
But as a businessman, he says he can't argue that it makes good financial sense, especially in his Carlsbad neighborhood, where the average cost of a home is $1 million. Donahue makes it clear his son-in-law and daughter are not freeloaders.
It's not like they moved in and quit their jobs and sit around and watch TV all day. No, they're working adults trying in this trying times right now. I mean, my gosh, the value of these homes is insane. And how could you afford to buy?
Ask all of them how long they think their living arrangement will last, and they are unanimous: forever. Andrew says the experience has taught him this adage is true. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
I feel like if you want to have a more fulfilling life, live with your family. Live with your friends even. Like, live with a big group of people, because it is nice to have that company around you.
To share a story about your multi-generational household and see other stories in this series, go to kpbs.org/roof. Here's another look at today's top stories. A compromise to suspend the nation's debt ceiling by President Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy is receiving opposition from both parties. The tentative deal includes new age and work requirements for SNAP benefits. Local groups like Feeding San Diego say if the deal passes, it could strain their service by increasing the number of people reaching out for food assistance and decreasing the amount of federal aid they receive. A press conference today highlighted the impacts the homeless encampments near local schools are having on children. Mayor Todd Gloria and city leaders are urging the city council to pass the proposed unsafe camping ordinance. It would ban tent encampments in all public spaces throughout the city if shelter beds are available and in areas near schools or parks, regardless of shelter capacity. And students at Carlsbad High School walked out of class today in support of their LGBTQ peers. Vice Principal Ethan Williams spoke at Mission Church earlier this month. He urged the audience to attend district meetings to call for no sexual identity or gender ideology curriculum, groups, and celebrations on public school campuses. Later, the school board decided to postpone a vote on raising the pride flag for Pride Month. Here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. The never-ending interview on NPR's Morning Edition. A recruiter and a dating coach weigh in on the stress of multiple rounds of interviews before a job seeker gets an offer. And one-on-one talk therapy is falling short for communities of color, particularly Asian Americans. KPBS Midday Edition takes a look at mental health in the community and where some are turning to ancient cultural practices. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us. I'm Amita Sharma. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.